Number 5. Bhangarh Fort. Now, if you Google Bhangarh Fort, if you're planning a trip up there anytime soon, almost every result will give you back something like India's most notorious or India's most haunted, so maybe that should give you a bit of a sense as to what's going on here. It's bad news. In fact, the place is said to be so filled to bursting with malevolent spirits that the Indian government actually restricts tourists from visiting after sunset for fear of spiritual danger. Let's take a look at the history of the Bhangarh Fort, one of the most notorious haunted places in India if the search engine is anything to go by. The fort was first built in the 17th century, and according to local legends, a religious ascetic lived nearby to the fort and insisted that any house built near the fort shouldn't be taller than his own house. Not sure why, but he just didn't want to be upstaged, I guess. If the shadow of any house fell on his own, he would destroy the fort, he threatened. When columns were added to the fort that casted a shadow, the fort was destroyed and abandoned seemingly overnight. Now, a variant of this legend suggests that a priest who practiced black magic and was a practitioner of the occult was in love with a princess who lived in the fort. He offered her a love elixir, and when she refused his proposal, he cursed the entire village, condemning it to be damned by the spirits for eternity. Locals claim that walking by the Bhangarh Fort, you can hear women screaming and crying from within at night, and strange otherworldly music can be heard playing seemingly from nowhere. Other residents claim that they see shadowy wisps or ethereal lights coming out of the fort's structure alongside strange smells? What does a ghost smell like, I wonder? You know what? Don't let me know. That's maybe one that's better left not knowing. The reason for the ban after sunset is because local legends say that any person who enters the fort during the night will never be seen again and will become one of the spirits trapped inside. So maybe just stay within the guidelines and follow the signs just this once. And if you're looking for more videos about haunted hotspots, alien sightings, cryptids, creepy crawlies, and basically just about anything scary under the sun and above it, well, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. So click on through, subscribe, stay scared, and don't miss a single scream. But do that after you finish watching this video, okay? We worked hardish on it. Number 4. Tunnel 33. Shimla is said to be one of the most beautiful cities in the entire country of India and happens to also be home to some of the more haunted hotspots. Now, this one in particular might not be as scary as some of the other ones in this list. I thought maybe I'd give you a little break before we really got into it. But this ghost has been described as a lot friendlier than your average spirit, more of a Casper, if you will. Tunnel 33 is the longest tunnel in the Kalka-Shimla railway track, built in the late 18th century in 1898. British railway engineer Colonel Balrog was the man in charge of constructing the project. Colonel Balrog, I'm pretty sure he was a Street Fighter character. Colonel Balrog was given a thin deadline and he failed to meet expectations for the tunnel, leading to him being humiliated in his career after the British government was understandably pretty upset with him. Distraught, completely despondent, he ended up taking his own life and was buried near the incomplete tunnel on the railroad tracks, where his spirit has remained ever since. Residents report seeing apparitions of the good colonel through the tunnel, sometimes saying they see him standing, admiring his work, riding his horse, or if you really believe some of the more out there stories, he's even been seen talking to tourists and locals as they pass through, asking questions about his tunnel and if the project is going well and if they're meeting deadlines. The poor guy is still so focused on his work all these years later. Take a break, man, for us, please. A phantasmal 15. You've earned it. There's something very sad about a ghost who's stuck on the land he worked on, unable to move on. He's not interested in haunting or scaring anyone, but just doomed to check in on a project he never got to see completed. If you ever visit the accursed tunnel, and if you happen to see the colonel, tell him thank you, won't you? For me, okay? Tell him that the tunnel looks great and he did a good job. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Number 3. Ramoji Film City. Ramoji Film City is one of the biggest film sets in the country. In fact, it's actually one of the largest film complexes in the entire world. I mean, it's a film city. How many other film cities are there really? It's a big attraction for movie lovers who come the world over to see its extravagant displays and exhibits, but also entices paranormal hunters looking for proof of the other world. And there's a little something for everyone here, you know? It's a real family place. So where does the haunting come from? Do the ghosts just love the silver screen? Well, Ramoji Film City was allegedly built on an old Nizam battleground. The Nizam of Hyderabad was the ruling caste of the area in the 18th century. Now, if these stories are true and it is built on an old battlefield, then it makes sense that there would be a good amount of lingering evil and restless spirits trapped in the soil that haven't moved on. Dying violently tends to make ghosts. Guests of the film city claim that while visiting, lights will flicker and turn on and off at random. Now, that could be bad wiring, but it also could be troublesome spirits. Where things get kind of spooky is the reports of crew members on film sets getting injured under mysterious circumstances, equipment malfunctioning, or outright being destroyed in front of people's very eyes. And these are some of the more common reports of things happening on the cursed set. Women in particular have felt targeted by the ghosts or spirits in the Ramoji Film City. Actresses have claimed that they felt like they were being watched in their green rooms or even feeling a supernatural tugging at their clothes during filming. Now, I'm sure they make all kinds of genres of movie at the Ramoji Film City, but if you want my professional advice, I think they should definitely consider filming a horror movie there. It sounds like they would save a ton on the special effects budget, or maybe they could make a documentary. Do you need to pay a ghost if you're gonna have a ghost in a movie? Do ghosts still have the same workers' rights? Somebody look into that for me. Number 2, the Charlesville Mansion. We're headed back to Shimla for this next one. It sounds like if you're booking a trip to India to take in the sights and the spirits, Shimla is the #1 place to be. Beautiful and filled with ghosts. Once you're done checking out the tunnel, take a trip to the Charlesville Mansion, said to be the home to an old poltergeist. It's a century-old abandoned fort built during the British rule, and its first owner was a British officer whose name has seemingly been lost to time. Probably something like Wilford Brimley, though that's a different guy. When the officer and his wife moved into the mansion in 1913, they were unaware of the rumors surrounding it, and they just thought they were getting a great deal on rent. A previous owner had already fled the property because of the hauntings that had taken place. They say that there was a ghostly figure that would slowly apparate in the middle of the night and would smash objects and throw them around the house. Now, despite this house being haunted, the officer himself didn't personally believe in ghosts. He wanted to test this theory of whether or not there was a poltergeist in his home, and so he locked all of the doors in his house and waited. Just sat there twiddling his thumbs, tapping his feet, waiting for a ghost to approach. Well, lo and behold, after locking all the doors, he heard a crash upstairs and ran upstairs, opened the door, and found that this one room had all of the furniture and all of the mirrors just utterly demolished. I think he moved out the same week. They say he moved out shortly after, but I can't even imagine he finished packing his bags. Now, the next owner was one Victor Bailey, an assistant secretary working on the railway construction at the time, and I gotta say, there must be some really bad vibes at the Shimla Railway if 2 entries on this list involve it. Anyway, the Baileys moved into the mansion, and at first it seemed like a great deal. Beautiful mansion secluded away from the rest of the world. Until one day at a dinner party, one of their guests reported that he was talking to a lovely English gentleman. Victor Bailey was a bit confused, and when he went back to go introduce himself to this guest, he watched the man disappear into the room the poltergeist destroyed, just vanished out of thin air, and the Baileys packed their bags and left shortly after. The mansion is now deserted and is a hotspot for paranormal activity, so enter if you dare. I actually don't even know if you can go in. Look into that maybe. Number 1, Dumas Beach. And we all love a good beach vacation. If you're looking for somewhere sweet to lay back while sipping on something sweet, India is full of some beautiful beaches. But we are not here to talk about anything lovely, okay? This isn't top 5 lovely, although that would be just delightful. I would love to work on top 5 lovely if we're ever gonna make that a channel. Maybe you guys are listening. We're going to Dumas Beach, located along the Arabian Sea in Gujarat. The first thing you'll notice about this beach that stands out is the black sand, which is already pretty unnerving. Most beaches don't look like that. The local folklore says that Dumas Beach used to be a burial ground for Hindu people, and as such, generations of spirits are ingrained into the sand. Building on this legend says that the reason for the obsidian-colored sand is years worth of cremated ash by the burning of the dead, eventually overtaking the sand on the beach. So, I don't know, if you're thinking about making a sand castle, maybe think twice about that. Maybe keep the flip-flops on too, okay? So what do people say about the spirits out there? Well, it's been said there's a negative aura present in the air, and even just while visiting, tourists and residents say they can feel this sense of dread that something is wrong immediately walking around there. Locals say that the spirits of the dead walk down the beach at night, and visitors claim to hear inexplicable voices, scary laughter, and crying. So if you want a nice, long, romantic walk down the beach in India, just keep in mind that you're gonna have a bit of an audience with you. Some people go so far as to say that there's been apparitions, floating orbs seen around the beach. I was having a bit of trouble finding any photos of any ghost sightings around the beach. People say dogs behave strangely, walking through it, howling and barking. There are some who believe that the animals can see spirits we can't, and this could be evidence of that. Now, the most extreme legends say that the tourists go missing around midnight on the beach, but I want to believe if people kept going missing on a beach, they'd shut it down, but I don't know. I've seen Jaws. I know that's not actually that likely. Number 5. The Stanley Hotel. The Stanley Hotel is as infamous as it is gorgeous. This scenic Colorado hotel isn't just famous for a picturesque view of the Rockies, it's also got quite a reputation for serving as the inspiration for fiction's most famous haunted hotel, the Overlook. Now, it didn't serve as the film set for the Stanley Kubrick film, but it was used for the limited TV series and of course inspired Stephen King's legendary horror novel. In 1974, King and his wife stayed at the hotel, visiting at a time when the hotel was preparing to close down for the season. King states that spending time in such a grandiose location, isolated from the rest of the world, away from other guests and signs of life, hearing this discordant, sad music playing in a giant empty dance hall ignited his imagination. He said he was fired up returning to his room 217, and upon pulling back the curtain to his clawfoot tub, imagined, what if somebody died there? And started writing The Shining that night. Now, since it's become known as the Overlook, the hotel has developed a real reputation for hauntings, even being dubbed the Disneyland for ghost hunters at one point. Paranormal enthusiasts come to check out everything staying at the Stanley, and the hotel itself encourages this behavior, offering guided tours. Some highlights include, obviously, room 217, the cursed room from the novel, and it's the most requested room in the hotel. Stories go that in the early 1900s, the head housekeeper was blasted through a floor after a gas leak caused an explosion, and they say that her spirit inhabits the room today, and guests report finding help from the afterlife. Luggage unpacked, lights being turned off, I gotta say, that is some room service. They say that almost every room and cranny of the Stanley is haunted in some way. Is it all just legend inspired by the novel, or is truth stranger than fiction? You'd have to book a trip up to the Stanley to find out. Take their Ghost Hunters package when you do, and tell them Top 5 Scary sent you. And if you're looking for more horror content and you just can't wait, you don't have to go anywhere off this page. Click through on Top 5 Scary because we have loads and loads of ghost videos for you to enjoy. Cryptids, aliens, scary stories, pretty much anything scary you can shake a stick at, we've got it. So stay subscribed, stay scared, but stay watching this video because we got way more story left to go. Number 4. The Fairmont Banff. Our next entry is one of Canada's most famous haunted hotels, and you know me, I love a local haunt. That's a little pun for you. The gorgeous property is well known internationally, and not just for its stunning views, but apparently because the place is just top to bottom ghost central. Let's take a look at some of the more notable ones that are haunting the property. The most famous specter at the Fairmont is that of the Ghost Bride. That was a Tim Burton movie, wasn't it? Her story takes us back to the late 1920s, and allegedly it goes that a beautiful young bride was dressed in her gown, ready for the ceremony, when something caught her heel, causing her to slip and fall down the hotel stairs, careening downwards, tragically cutting her life short. Since then, hotel staff and guests alike have reported numerous sightings of a weird veiled figure moving up and down the stairs in a long ethereal white gown, or seeing her in the ballroom by herself, dancing alone, waiting for that first dance she never got. Aww. I dance with you, Ghost Bride. The bride is only one of many ghosts though. The Banff doesn't want to give out the room numbers to avoid any trouble, but allegedly a great number of the rooms in the hotel are cursed. One in question is allegedly the site of a brutal crime, and the story has been told and retold countless times over with details swapped around to make it scarier, but it says that a family was all found dead. And since then, guests have reported horrifying things like hearing screams in the middle of the night or finding handprints on the mirror. If you visit the floor the room is supposed to be on, this room will be closed down to keep guests out, although they say it's just for renovations. Go there, check it out, and then decide for yourself if that's all just a cover story. Number 3. The Crescent Hotel. If you're ever making your way through Arkansas, you simply have to stop off at the Crescent Hotel. It's been called the Grand Old Lady of the Ozarks due to its gorgeous gorgeous old Gothic design and wonderful mountaintop view. It's kind of a shame almost that such a pretty place has such a morbid, haunted history, but that seems to be a running theme with all these delightful old hotels. The more beautiful they are, the more haunted you are. Its problems began during its construction. A construction worker named Michael plunged to his death from the roof, fatally landing in room 218. Unsurprisingly, since then, that room is said to be haunted, with guests reporting bizarre noises being heard from inside. And this is far from the only cursed tale of this hotel though. Before it found a new life as a hotel, the Crescent was a alternative clinic of sorts, run by a charismatic charlatan by the name of Norman Baker, who claimed that the waters of the nearby springs were so refreshing and so restorative that they could cure any ailment you might have. This might surprise you, but this was not true, as Baker did not have even the most minute amount of medical training. He was just a con man with a winning smile and a bunch of $5 words. Patients would check in expecting to be cured for cancer. That was his main operation. He said he could cure cancer. And his cancer cure was just an injection of corn silk and water, which doesn't do anything. Baker would find himself arrested in 1949, but unfortunately for the victims of his scams, their souls wouldn't find peace just yet. All throughout the hotel, guests report ghostly figures, seeing floating orbs passing through the halls, hearing screams, laughters, and strange bumps in the night. One particularly notable ghost around the Crescent is named Theodora, who was once one of the nurses employed there. Well, nurses. They say she hates mess, and many guests report that they'll discover their belongings have been reorganized for them. I love hearing stories about these helpful ghosts that don't haunt you, they just pack up your stuff for you. Among the cutest stories of spirits, however, is reports of a ghost cat named Morris, who guests claim they can hear purring or feeling a warm sensation on their lap or leg. Oh, the little ghost kitty wants some scritches? I guess he ran out of 9 lives. Guess they're not quite enough. I hope there's some meow mix up in the afterlife. Number 2, the Langham. The Langham Hotel is one of the most famous hotels in England. It's gorgeous and renowned, and it's entertained all manner of famous guests over the many years of its service, and if you believe the rumors, might be entertaining them still if their spirits are still lingering onwards. Built in 1865, is it any wonder now that this hotel is a haunting ground for restless spirits? One of the more reported ghosts to come out of the Langham Hotel is that of a man decked out in Victorian evening wear, seemingly trapped inside room 333. He appears during October, unable to move on from his final resting spot. If you ask the locals, they'll tell you a story of how years and years past, a doctor and his new wife checked into the Langham for their honeymoon. No one seems to agree on what transpired or why this happened, but what's known is that something inside the doctor snapped, and he claimed the life of his new bride, and overcome with grief, took his own life as well, and since then has been unwilling or unable to leave. In 1973, a BBC journalist staying in the room woke up one night in October and claims he saw a fluorescent hovering ball of pure light above him in the room, which then materialized as this man in front of him. The man appeared in Victorian era attire, then pointed ominously at the reporter, who fled the room. Yeah, I would probably do the exact same thing, to be completely frank. It's very refreshing to hear someone act so rationally towards a ghost. Guests sometimes complain of this room feeling overwhelmingly hot or lights flickering on and off during the middle of the night. You know, classic poltergeist behavior. The Victorian doctor is far from the only ghost said to reside in the hotel. Alongside Napoleon III, a butler, and a man in a powdered wig are all repeat offenders. So if you head on up to the Langham, keep an eye out for those beloved guests. And number 1, Myrtles Plantation. Our final entry is Myrtles Plantation, said to be one of the most haunted buildings in the entire United States. It's home to many ghost stories and legends stemming from a violent, sordid, unpleasant past. The plantation was first built in 1796, where it traded hands several times between a number of wealthy families. Our first story of haunting comes from 1834, when it was owned by Clark Woodruff, a prestigious judge and, well, also a slave owner. Of his slaves, one was named Chloe, who was a particular target of Woodruff's unimaginable cruelty. She tried to protect herself by eavesdropping and learning what she could do to alter her behavior, but unfortunately, this would just serve as a punishment, as when Woodruff learned she was eavesdropping on him, he had her ears cut off, and then made her wear a green head wrap to not have to look at what he had done. He sounds like a really lovely, lovely guy. Legend states that to strike back, Chloe poisoned a cake the Woodruffs were going to eat at a party. And weirdly, there's some differing reports and versions of this story change the intent. Sometimes Chloe was looking to get rid of them. Sometimes she just wanted to make them sick to teach them a lesson. Well, the dosage was lethal, and Mrs. Woodruff and the rest of the family, save for Mr. Woodruff, were all lethally poisoned. As a retaliation, Chloe was hanged on the property. Some believe that she still haunts the ground and that her ghost can be seen, still sporting that green head wrap. The next owners would not fare much better. The next owner was a wealthy family, the Winters. Mr. Winter was a teacher, and one day a stranger riding by came out and fired at Mr. Winter fatally, where he staggered up the stairs to breathe his last. Visitors say that you can still hear his forceful stomps up the stairs as he attempted to get help. The plantation harbors a dark history, but has remained a popular spot for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts to go and stay the night to see what they can find. Number 5. The Lexington. If you're a Texas native, then you probably don't need much introduction to the USS Lexington. Formerly known as the Blue Ghost, the decommissioned aircraft carrier now stands as a museum, and it's thought by some to hold a lot more than some old war relics and stories. Might just contain some old souls who've never quite left its service. The museum's director of operations, Charles Russell, claims that the museum receives hundreds upon hundreds of reports of supernatural and inexplicable activity and sightings every single year. Most famous among them is a benevolent ghost dressed in a sailor's uniform who aids guests in finding their way around the ship before vanishing back into the air. He describes one particularly vivid encounter with a spirit inhabiting his office where, after losing 6 pens over the course of a week, he found all of them arranged perfectly, laying side by side in front of his keyboard. He reassures visitors that the spirits who live aboard the Lexington are playful, not frightful. They're more like Casper in that regard, I guess. Other stories tell sightings and reports of hearing lost souls running for cover after a torpedo attack, describing running sounds and other strange noises in the hangar bay. The paranormal tour guide aboard the Lexington describes it as, this was their home and they don't want to go anywhere else. I kind of get it, you know? I'd want to live on an aircraft carrier, that seems pretty cool. I'd try to swing that as long as I could. Like most purportedly haunted locations, if finding something spooky in the cold steel of the Lexington truly interests you, the museum offers a paranormal investigation tour, where guests can spend the night with their own equipment in the hopes of finding someone to trip up your EVP meter. And if that ain't enough for you and you're looking for something spooky from the confines of your own home, well, we can hook you up with that real easy. Click through on Top 5 Scary, because we've got loads of videos about haunted spots, ghosts, ghouls, goblins, aliens, cryptids, conspiracies, and just about anything freaky you can think up. Stay subscribed, stay scared, but, you know, stay watching this video as well, okay? We worked hard. Number 4. La Carafe. La Carafe up in Houston looks unassuming at first. Looks like a pretty typical dive bar experience. Looks nice though, I definitely would like to go. But if you believe the rumors, allegedly this is one of the most haunted buildings in the entire state. The bar also is one of the oldest buildings in Texas as well, having been initially built sometime in the early 1800s. It's seen life as quite a few things: a pharmacy, an apothecary, a bakery, and eventually La Carafe. So it's not too surprising that in all of its years of service, picked up a few guests who aren't ready to pay the bill and leave just yet. Many regular customers have a ghost story to tell you, as well as the bartenders. Many report strange noises, a glass breaking mysteriously, some even seeing lipstick stains on a glass they're drinking from appear out of nowhere. Do ghosts have germs? Is it safe to share a drink with a ghost? I don't know if I would do that unless we got to know each other a bit first, and then hey, anything can happen. I'm open. The bar is said to be haunted by a former tender named Carl, who frequent guests claim they can hear shouting out for last call still years after passing the bar. Some claim they can see Carl's silhouette through a second-floor window. Another ghost said to haunt the premises is the Lady in White, who supposedly pushed attractive women down the stairs. Hardly a way to get them to like you, let me tell you from experience. She's thought to be the ghost of a woman who ran a cat house near the Carafe. Believers say that they see orbs and mist in photos and feel cold spots all over. I guess you could say they serve up more than one kind of spirits. I'll see myself out. I'm sorry, that's not my best work. If you're ever in Houston and looking for a bit of spooky ambiance, definitely check out the Carafe and all of its otherworldly guests. Just make sure to tip your ghost about 15%. Number 3, the Driskill Hotel. The Driskill Hotel is another shining spot in the state, said to be a hotbed of paranormal activity. Lone Star State, Lone Scare State, more like. With how many ghosts are said to live in this place, it's hard to imagine that you'd even be able to get a free room. One of the more notable ones is the owner, the cowboy Jesse Driskill himself, who built the place originally. Shortly after the hotel's construction, it's said that Jesse came under very hard times. So, desperate for money, Jesse gambled away the deed to the hotel in a game of cards, and was forever swallowed by this guilt, losing his cherished prize. It's said his spirit still resides in this hotel, in the room looking out at 6th Street and Brazos. A consultant once reported looking out of the window in this room and seeing a man dressed in old western attire, puffing a cigar, asking, "Hey fella, what are you doing in my room?" When he flicked the lights on and off to make sure he wasn't seeing what he thought he'd seen, the varmint disappeared, leaving behind only a trail of smoke. Another notable ghost guests like to talk about is the bride, the ghost of a distraught woman who ended her life in the early 1990s after her wedding was called off, as she blew through all her money in a desperate coping attempt. I get it. Guests say that they see her ghost towing bags up and down the halls of the hotel, still running mad. Now I'll leave you with one last good spooky story out of the Driskill. There was actually so many for this one. Definitely read up on it at home or visit if you're nearby. It seems like there's a lot going on. There's a painting on the 5th floor. It's a painting of a little girl holding a bouquet of flowers in one hand and a letter in the other. Paranormal enthusiasts claim that this painting is the daughter of a US senator who passed away in a freak accident at the hotel, and her spirit lingers on in the canvas. Guests claim that they can feel something tugging at their coats or legs when they walk on by. Oof, it's a little too interactive for me for an art experience. Number 2, the Oakwood Cemetery. I gotta say, a cemetery is a pretty classical location for something haunted to be happening. I think we all sort of suspect most cemeteries are haunted as is. I mean, a couple thousand dead bodies all buried underneath the same plot makes my hair stand on end. I said I was gonna try not to do a southern drawl, but I swear it's coming on naturally. I'm sorry. Oakwood Cemetery in particular is well known as a haunted spot to those who believe. It was established sometime in the 1850s, though it's thought that earlier settlers were laid to rest there too. With 23,000 souls resting there, it's no surprise that there is a litany of spooky stories amongst the tombstones. Take a listen to some of the more notable ones I dug up for you. One in particular that gets retold is that of Eula Phillips, a young woman who was struck fatally with an axe on Christmas Eve. Not that there's ever a good day for that, but that's a pretty bad one. Her husband was found guilty, only to be exonerated later when it turned out that there was a series of victims all around the same area matching her profile. 8 others who all fell victim to this is unbelievable that any newspaper ever printed this name, the Servant Girl Annihilator. I cannot believe they named him that. I've actually featured him in a video before. I can't quite remember the title of it, but click through on every single top 5 scary video until you find it. There are some theorists who suspect the Servant Girl Annihilator and the infamous Jack the Ripper are one and the same, and that guy just could not get enough traveling from country to country. Some local residents claim that Eula's ghost roams the cemetery, lost, afraid, and panicked, unable to come to terms with the vile means of her death. Another very notable ghost is that of Susanna Dickinson. When Lopez de Santa Anna attacked the Alamo, Susanna and her kin were brought into the garrison. The dust cleared and the battle was over, and Susanna met with Santa Anna, where he offered to take her and her children back to Mexico. But she declined, knowing it might even cost her her life. Surprised, Santa Anna spared her, and her account of the Alamo was crucial to understanding and remembering what happened there. Susanna was buried at a plot in Oakwood, and visitors say she constantly appears to strangers, telling her stories all these years on, still remembering the Alamo. And number 1, Yorktown Memorial Hospital. About 80 miles southeast of San Antonio is Yorktown, a small community with a population that barely exceeds a couple thousand. Probably a good reason for that, because if the legends are to be believed, the hauntings at the Yorktown Memorial Hospital might be keeping people away. The hospital was built in 1951, where it operated for a bit, and was eventually took over by the Felician Sisters of the Roman Catholic Church, who kept the place running until late 1986 when it was abandoned, where it still sits today, almost as if nothing's happened. It looks like everybody just packed up and left. It's said that over 2,000 people call Yorktown their final resting spot, with 500 of those all occurring during the small tenure of the nuns running the hospital. These days, of course, the hospital's sickly lime green walls don't really see a lot of patients. Mostly just ghost hunters and seekers of the paranormal looking for something lurking left behind. And if the stories are true, this place is filled with restless ghosts. Explorers report everything from disembodied voices to sounds of wheelchairs creaking, mysterious flashes of lights, orbs, mists, cold chills, you know, the usual who's who greatest hits of haunted spots. Now, you don't even need to be told this place is haunted to worry about it. I mean, just look at it. The place looks like it's straight out of Silent Hill, down to the rusted pipes and leaky hallways, but don't fret, no, there are ghosts. One in particular is that of a late surgeon, one Leon Norwirski. He was infamous around the hospital for his sloppy handiwork, and was said to have lost a number of patients in his time, and his spirit as such has been cursed to wander the facilities endlessly. Keeps writing terrifying messages on the wall, but no one can read them because he's a doctor. That's not my best work. I'm really sorry. Some of these should have stayed on the writing board. Another infamous ghost is that of Sally, a young girl who's said to still live in the hospital's halls, heard happily playing, jovially dancing around, and even asking explorers to read her favorite story when she encounters them. I hope someone takes her up on that. Not me though, nothing personal. I just have like a policy about not reading stories to ghosts.
Coming in at number 5, we have South Manitou Island in Leland. South Manitou Island is part of an island chain in Lake Michigan that extends north to the Straits of Mackinac. The only public access is by ferry from Leland, Michigan. The island consists of a ridge of tilted layers of limestone buried under a blanket of glacial debris. 16 miles offshore from the Leelanau Peninsula, featuring 300-foot sand dunes, deserted shoreline, and empty campground, it's about as terrestrially creepy as you can get in Michigan. In the 1800s, the island became a popular harbor for ships traversing the newly built Erie Canal into the Great Lakes and on to Chicago. One local legend surrounds a ship full of passengers stricken with cholera stopped at South Manitou, where sailors buried their victims in a mass grave, some of them still alive at the time. Soon after this incident, the first appearance of ghosts and hauntings began. The mass grave is believed to be near the old cemetery just north of the Bay campground. This is also near where the old dock used to be located. Additionally, the passage between mainland Michigan and Manitou is one of the deadliest sections of Lake Michigan. This is due to a sudden weather change, creating a navigational hazard, causing over 50 known shipwrecks. Traffic was quite busy here during the late 1800s, and there were frequent accidents where ships would literally run into each other. Off the coast of the island lies the shipwreck of the SS Francisco Morazan, where rumors say a young island boy died after trying to explore on his own. There are also 2 cemeteries on the island and an ancient cedar forest where voices are said to be heard. The haunting of this island is so bad it has driven park rangers to go mad and demand to be taken off the island. One ranger even confessed to hearing voices, footsteps, and slamming of doors inside buildings that were otherwise unoccupied. Coming in at number 4, we have Masonic Temple. With over 16 floors and 1,000 rooms, this Gothic temple is one of the most striking buildings in Detroit. Furthermore, this is the largest Masonic temple in the world. According to rumors, there are hidden passageways, rooms, and staircases, so be careful as you might get lost quite quickly within the walls of this temple. The most famous urban myth associated with the temple is that of the architect George D. Mason. Legend has it that Mason went bankrupt funding the construction of the temple. He was going through financial difficulties and was very close to foreclosure. Due to this stress, George D. jumped to his death from the roof. This story will back up the fact that many reports of a ghost climbing the steps to the roof of the building as if stuck in a loop of his darkest moment. Even scarier, additionally, guards frequently find the door to the roof unlocked, even when it was just checked moments earlier. Additionally, the temple has various cold spots and doors are reported to close suddenly. One of the roof doors is said to swing open just moments after it is locked by a watchman. Many people report the feeling of being watched while inside of the building. Coming in at number 3, we have Doherty Hotel. The Doherty family has owned and operated the hotel since it opened in the 1920s. The Doherty men were and remain the business managers. However, as the current owner Jim Doherty tells it, it was the Doherty women who were the heart and soul of the business. The hotel has a colorful history. During Prohibition, it was a speakeasy, a place for backroom gambling and adult entertainment. It was also a meeting place for the Mafia and Purple Gang. Here, they worked out their differences. In 1938, the hotel was the site of one of Michigan's most notorious murders. Isaiah Lebo, former Purple Gang attorney turned Purple Gang businessman was murdered in the bar. He was shot by his cousin and business partner Jack Livingston and sadly passed away. Ever since, there have been numerous hauntings. Some believe it's Lebo who haunts the ground or grandmother Helen Doherty who passed away at the hotel. But there is one thing for sure, and it's the many ghost stories that are now associated with the hotel. Guests, visitors, investigators, employees, and the owners have all had some kind of paranormal experience at the hotel, which includes perfume scent wafting through occasionally, loud knocking, bedroom doors open and close by themselves, and dark apparitions and shadowy figures have been spotted anywhere from the lobby to the top floor. Also, the spirits of other murder victims roam the halls, lobbies, and rooms. While some can be seen, others prefer to just make noise. Coming in at number 2, we have Michigan's first state prison. Established in 1838, Michigan's first state prison remained in operation through 1934. The prison served as the nucleus for the city as it spanned some 20 acres. Over the years, it relocated and at one point became the largest walled prison in the world with around 6,000 inmates. In 1952, in response to poor medical care, brutality from the guards, and bad food, 2 maximum security prisoners took hold of a guard and used his keys to release other inmates. A days-long riot ensued, resulting in 9 guards being held hostage. Additionally, the riot resulted in the deaths of several inmates and guards before it was extinguished by the National Guard. The inmates fought for and won a list of 11 demands for reform. Today, the old prison has become the Armory Arts Village, a residence and studio for local artisans. Apartments are very contemporary and halls are covered with artwork. In spite of its modern renovations and freshly painted walls, though, rumors persist of its haunting. Visitors, workers, and artists of the space claim some prisoners and guards still haunt their former home. Residual sounds of riots are also frequently reported due to the prison's history of such occurrences. Judy Krasnow, an employee at the renovated Arts Village, hosts daytime historic tours of the prison, so a visitor can see the hauntings for themselves. She is also a resident of the prison and lives on site. She has confessed she believes her apartment, which was once a series of prison cells, has ghosts. Furthermore, Judy is not the only resident who believes that. Even though the upper floors have undergone renovations, the underground section that holds solitary confinement remains structurally intact. Although cells have been removed, there is intensity in this area that cannot be denied. And finally, in at number 1, we have the Whitney Restaurant. Located on Woodward Avenue, Restaurant Whitney was the former mansion home of David Whitney. David was one of the Midwest's wealthiest lumber barons at the turn of the century, and he built this magnificent 21,000 square foot home in 1894. The mansion was restored in the mid-1980s, and since then, reports of unexplained paranormal activities have been reported, such as shadow figures have been seen on the second floor, disembodied voices have been heard, and other strange phenomena have occurred. It is known that the mansion is haunted by Whitney and his first wife Flora. Flora always wanted to live in a mansion but died before the home was finished, leaving Whitney to raise their 4 children. A year after Flora's death, Whitney married her sister Sarah, leaving Flora's ghost to forever live in distress. The paranormal activity within the restaurant is not for the faint-hearted, as there have been reports of the elevator traveling between floors on its own with no one inside to operate it. Furthermore, ghosts have been witnessed on the upper floors, with one staff member seeing an older man looking out the window. The staff member approached the man asking him to leave, and right before the staff's eyes, the man vanishes into the floor. Other reports include noises that sound like silverware and kitchenware being handled and or stacked in table settings keep getting moved around by some unseen presence. The outhouse is said to be the most haunted part of the property. It was originally built for Whitney's slaves and has been largely untouched for years, mostly due to the fear of paranormal. Inside the outhouse is a dining table that is set for the afternoon tea and has been untouched for as long as anyone can remember. Today is still perfectly set but covered in a thick layer of dust, adding to the ghostly atmosphere. The outhouse has no electricity, so sits in the darkness at night. A tour guide who once worked at the Whitney insisted that the building was haunted for his experiences working there. The worker claims a group of dolls vanished from a room inside the building. Also, the worker has reported hearing his name being called from an empty area of the building. The Whitney Mansion is an elegant and beautiful property but has high body counts, a haunting history, and plenty of supernatural sightings still happening today.